Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight is November 15th. We will call this meeting back to order at 6:39 p.m. Please rise for the clerk to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members, may I have a motion, please, and a second that we approve the agenda for November 15th, 2022 as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Board members, may I have a motion and a second that the board approves the consent agenda as submitted in your packet?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mark, second by Emily. Questions or comments on that? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. We do not have a treasurer's report this evening. And then that brings us to special reports.
Great. We do have a special report this evening, a textbook presentation, so I'll invite up our presenters. You might need to bring one chair. I realize we just have two up here. And I will let them introduce themselves and walk through the three textbooks that are being presented. And as a reminder for the board and community, textbooks go through a process that they'll talk about. They are presented to the board, then they go on public comment at the district office and our public library. And then after that comment, if there's any comments, we look at, and then they come back to the board for approval or more discussion. Great. I'll turn it over. If you guys can introduce yourselves, and the clicker is there.
Good evening. I am Sheena Conway, Director of Humanities.
I'm Jackie Sauter, the Humanities TOSA.
I'm Janine Rude, fourth grade teacher.
All right, so for our textbook selection process, we work with the grade level teams and Sheena and I, and we look at choosing textbooks that also align with the standards and criteria that we use. So we use the New York State Next Generation ELA standards, the New York State Social Studies Framework, the New York State Social Emotional Learning Benchmarks, the Culturally Responsive and Sustaining Framework, along with the Learning for Justice Social Justice Standards. So the first book that we would like to present today is Last Stop on Market Street. It's written by Matt De La Pena and illustrated by Christian Robinson. So this book we are presenting for our second grade classes. So it follows a young boy named CJ as he learns to appreciate the beauty in everyday things during a bus ride. So every Sunday after church, CJ and his grandma ride the bus around town. But today, CJ wonders why they don't own a car like his friend Colby. Why doesn't he have an iPod like the boys on the bus? How come they always have to get off in the dirty part of town? Each question is met with an encouraging answer from Grandma, who helps him to see the beauty in their routine and the world around them. This correlates directly to the second grade social studies standards, where they really look at the similarities and differences in communities, and also how they can play a role in their community and communities around them. So that unit really focuses on the importance of your community ties and giving back to the community through acts of kindness and volunteering, which comes up directly in this text.
The next book is Hiawatha and the Peacemaker, and it's written by Robbie Robertson, who is of Mohawk and Cayuga heritage himself. The pictures are by David Shannon, and kids love them. Hiawatha is a brave Mohawk warrior who lost his family in battle and wants revenge against the chief who provoked fighting among the 5 Haudenosaunee tribes. One day, the peacemaker appears. He is a prophet who wishes they unite the warring tribes. He chooses Hiawatha to help him communicate his message of peace, the great law that will not only change the ways of the Haudenosaunee people forever, but also transform Hiawatha's own mind and heart. We've met fourth grade teachers across the whole district from all 4 buildings and really dove into this book. And it's a complex read, and it's not something that we would expect the kids to do on their own, and it's something that we would revisit over several days. We have a lesson that correlates to the to traditional literature, just talking to kids about oral tradition, and it helps us understand their beliefs and values. And we also wrote a lesson that that teaches them what people of the Longhouse really means, and it's not just something they live in. It is that all nations are one family together. Teaches them about Iroquois Confederacy and the Great Law of Peace, and their beliefs and how that came to be. It also has SEL connections. The character in the story, Hiawatha definitely has some very strong feelings, and the peacemaker helps him deal with those feelings at each stop of the way, and as they're building these nations and traveling together. Lots of great conversations can be had around that. And then we can actually then revisit this book in the spring when we get to the new nation after the Revolutionary War and the country's building their own constitution. They look to the Iroquois Confederacy. And the awesome connection in this book that Robbie Robertson has made is he heard this story himself as a Haudenosaunee as a child, 9 years old, and it was passed to him through that oral tradition. And then he brings in the history of the Confederacy and connects it himself to the government. So there's lots of connections there.
It's tough to follow that. Nice job, Janine. So I have the honor of presenting Esperanza Rising. So that is our 5th grade text. So Esperanza, the summary of Esperanza Rising is she thought she'd always live a privileged life on her family's ranch in Mexico. So it's actually a riches to rags story. It's sort of the reverse of what we would normally, learn about. She'd always have fancy dresses, a beautiful home filled with servants, and Mama and Papa and Abuelita to care for her. But a sudden tragedy forces Esperanza and Mama to flee to California and settle in a Mexican farm labor camp. Esperanza isn't ready for the hard work, financial struggles brought on by the Great Depression, or lack of acceptance she now faces. When Mama gets sick and the strike for better working conditions threatens to uproot their new life, Esperanza must find a way to rise above her difficult circumstances because Mama's life and her own depend on it. So there's lots of connections going on in this book. There's a strong social studies connection. So chronologically, this takes place during the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, the subsequent reaction by the government to deport migrant workers, specifically Mexican migrant workers. It also has strong SEL connections, so we're really trying to cultivate empathy and we're trying to cultivate social awareness within our students that are reading this text, and really just trying to dig into, what this must have felt like for Esperanza and her family. Going from having a lot to very little. And so the next slide, Janine really spoke about this beautifully, is how are we supporting teachers with these new texts that we adopt? So Esperanza, Last Stop on Market Street, Hiawatha and the Peacemaker, we're developing grade level lessons to support instruction in the classroom. So as Janine mentioned, we've developed lessons. For example, we have Hiawatha and the Peacemaker up here, social studies connections. So again, the Great Law of Peace influencing democracy and our founding fathers, but also the SEL connections that are available in this text that we want students to access. Same for Esperanza and the same for Last Stop on Market Street. And I just really have to give kudos to our teachers. We've had release days as of late. 4th grade developed, we weren't expecting this. They developed multiple lesson plans. We were just going in thinking we'd develop one. Meanwhile, we developed 4 or 5 for teachers to be able to choose from. So it's really exciting work, and it's done with teachers, by teachers, and really what's better than that. So again, if possible, board approval, grade 4 teachers develop these lesson plans already, and we'll continue to develop lesson plans for the other texts as well. So really excited to present these tonight, and we'd be happy to field any questions that you have.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments? Mark?
I just have a comment. I learned, one thing I learned being on the board years ago was I thought that you had a lesson, you talked about a topic, and I learned that you really weave everything together, literature, history, and all those things together, so your lesson plans are covering multiple facets because everything is integrated. And it's kind of like we do with science now, right? We've integrated all that together. So it's good to see that these books promote that and that you're utilizing those to keep integrating all these concepts so they're not taught in isolation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. That is the point of the integrated work that we're doing, and it's hard work, but it's important work. It's research-based work, and bringing the teachers together to be able to do this work it's critical. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm especially excited about Hiawatha and the Peacemaker. David Shannon is a brilliant artist, and I forget, I'm just seeing the baby that he used to illustrate that was in my house a lot. And there's just so much richness in this book, and I can see multiple lessons being developed, and I hope the teachers were excited. And with this material, and that's why things just came out so much. And I'm really, really interested to get feedback from the kiddos and hear what they see, because Hiawatha has to deal with such intense emotions, and look at what he does with that, right? Like things are going to happen to us all the time, and we can never change that. What we can change is our reaction to it.
Right.
Right.
Every step of the way.
Every
he
step of
saw
the way.
a problem.
Yeah.
And the Peacemaker helped him work through that in
Right.
a different way each time.
Okay, so at the end, I'm going to go find this book and read it, but could you give me a little heads up? At the end of it, is there a way I can find my own Peacemaker? To help me with every step of the way? No? Okay, all right, just one.
I'll ask the fourth graders.
Thank you. But thank you. But Esperanza Rising, this is not a new book for the district.
It's not a new book. So we have fifth grade teachers that are using it. They're just not using
Yeah.
it consistently across the district. So
Okay.
we thought to bring the consistency and the cohesion, we'd like every fifth grade teacher to use it during their immigration, migration, and westward expansion unit. It comes towards the end of the year. So again, we want to create common lessons with teachers.
Okay.
And so that's sort of, you're right though, it has been
Perfect.
used, but just not consistently across
Okay.
all the buildings.
Yeah,
Yep.
and how interesting it would be when our children get together from different classes, different schools, and they talk about Esperanza Rising, and they can have this common conversation and put their ideas together and their feelings. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty exciting. Thank you for your work.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank
I
you.
love books. I love books. So thank you for
So
your
do
work.
kids.
Yeah.
And Krista, to your point around the teachers being excited, so Tasha and I went to, we visited both days of the release days, but one of the days the group was working at Harris Hill, and we literally could feel the energy and the excitement coming down the hall. And we walked in, and the ideas were flying across the room, and so many really great lesson ideas, as well as the connections. The author's note in the back of the book, how the teachers are going to use that to really speak to students' own cultures and stories, and how stories are passed along in our families, and we're excited.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in that author's
There's a
note.
lot of power
It makes
in
it
that
so
author's note.
authentic to read this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Yes.
well, all these questions and comments brought, a comment to to the forefront for me. And I can see that, from what you've described anyway, that all three of those books touch on the ability to have empathy for others. And I've said this before, and I know that you all agree, but the sooner we learn that in life, the better things go, because when we understand each other, there's just so much more cohesiveness. So another way in which these look very interesting and a good choice. I appreciate that that's being tended to without being obvious. You don't have to, okay, everybody sit down, we're going to learn about empathy now. You can just show it over and over again, and then it's good for us all. And I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else have comments? Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
That was
Yes, thank you
lovely.
for having
Appreciate all
us.
your hard work. And remind me, the books go somewhere?
Yeah, they go to the public library
Okay.
and district office, so if anybody in the community wants to go and take a look, they're on display, and then there's little comment cards you can fill out if you have any comments on the books, and then that all comes back to the board to review before look at approval. So my only concern is if you present, can you try to be a little bit more engaging and exciting? Maybe a little more excited about, no, I'm just kidding. You guys did a great
Lots more,
job.
I could
I know. I think it's great.
I wanted to do a little read aloud, but I was like, yeah, we probably don't have time for that.
It's very long.
I hope, and I know the board knows and appreciates, is the amount of work that goes into selecting a text. And, you know, and I can't speak how all districts do it, but Penfield's really has built this system of really digging in, having teacher voice at the table, looking at what else is out there, and then tying it back to teaching, tying it back to the frameworks and the standards, and preparing our students for success outside of the classroom as well. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
That concludes special reports.
All righty. So that brings us on to our student representative report. Hi, Lila.
Hi, good evening. So just to begin with a couple of district-wide updates. So last week was STEAM Week. So this really consisted of many activities to encourage and support the science, technology, engineering, art, and those fields. So this included activities like the robotics team delivering Mindstorm education kits to the Rochester City School District, school number 45, and presenting to elementary schools about high school robotics and other opportunities within the STEAM fields. At PHS, we had our NHS Fall Induction, where 3 seniors were inducted. Also in NHS, they are currently running 2 service projects, and donations are greatly appreciated. The first is a children's book drive to benefit the Ronald McDonald House, and these books must be new but can be any genre of children's books. And the second is a bedding drive to benefit Saints Place. Model UN had its first conference of the year at Hilton High School. People did great. A lot of our students won awards, so that was really great to see. And today marked the beginning of winter sports. And the PHS Fall Play, the Canterville Ghost, is this weekend, with opening night being on Thursday. At Bay Trail, the Fly Fishing Club went to a local stream. Students worked through an escape room using math skills they have learned. And in Home and Careers, students made homemade hot chocolate. At Scribner, in music classes, students are learning how to compose variations using hot crust buns as a theme. At Harris Hill, kindergartners, first and second graders all attended a special Veterans Day assembly. At Indian Landing, in PE, students are bowling. And at Cobbles, students and staff were able to thank and cheer on the veterans that were in the Veterans Day Parade last Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, questions for Lila?
No.
Oh, thank you. Is there a date on the donations? Do you know?
Yes, so for the Ronald McDonald Children's Book Drive, that one is going until December 2nd.
Okay.
And the bedding drive, I believe, is also December 1st.
Great. Thank you. All righty. I think you're up.
Thanks. Just as a note, Dr. Driffel is at a conference this week for business officials across the state. I'm sure talking about lots of business official things. So I will be doing his business slide. So just a couple of student staff honors. Congratulations to our PHS seniors, Gabriella, Colin, and Danielle, who were inducted into the National Honor Society at the fall induction ceremony. As a reminder, there's induction in spring and then also an opportunity for the fall. So congratulations to our newest members of the PHS National Honor Society. Our Hochstein Youth Symphony Orchestra, congratulations to the students who've been selected to participate in the 2022-2023 Hochstein Youth Symphony Orchestra. Their names are there, their photo is there, it's all on the agenda, and just a huge congratulations. And also congratulations to our principal at the high school, Mrs. Leona Watt, on being named the recipient of the 2022 Genesee Valley Region PTA Administrator Award. And I know there's a celebration for those awards taking place tomorrow, so congratulations to Mrs. Watt. Today is School-Related Professionals Day, and so we're celebrating our school-related professionals. Just wanted to say on behalf of the district and the board, a thank you to all of our amazing SRPs for everything you do to support our students, our staff, and our families. They are truly superheroes among us, and today across the nation is recognition for School-Related Professionals Day, so thank you. Kathleen, thank you. Yeah. Nancy Bradstreet, I think, maybe falls there too.
would
There's
say
a big
so.
list, but thanks for everybody who's out there. I wanted to give an update to, I'll shift to building safety plans. So last board meeting, the board officially approved our building safety plans. And since then, we met, we reviewed a concern that came forward around main entrance door security with our internal teams, our internal security team and principals. And we're moving to double locked vestibules at all school buildings. And we've also have updated our training of staff managing those vestibules, and we appreciate community comment and support and the time it takes to dig in. And so this is a shift where all of our doors, our entrance doors, have always been locked. We do have a couple of four schools that have a vestibule, and the exterior door into the vestibule isn't always locked, but parents, visitors, people can't get into the building even if they get into the vestibule. But based on comments and review and the security team, we're already shifting and should have that in place very soon. And so those vestibules will be double locked. So visitors will have to buzz to get into the vestibule and then sort of state their business, go through the process, and then if appropriate, be buzzed into the building itself. And that shift will also come at Harris Hill and PHS, where they don't have vestibules now. They're building them as part of our capital project, and that will be in that capital project to have those double locked. And so that's an update from our building safety plans that we talked about last meeting. Those are my updates.
Board members, questions, comments? No, thank you. Thank you for explaining double locked, because I was a little confused.
Yeah, there was some, it's important, is that the vestibule, we've always had it, is the first door was unlocked. Typically, you know, we do have rain and snow and sleet and all that fun stuff in Rochester, and then was allowed to come in and talk to the person manning the door. But, you know, and we hear concerns, we dig into them, met with the security team, and our George English and Brandon Fox are already working through that, and we're making that change as quickly as we can to have double locked doors. We just have to make sure that we can buzz open those front doors. And it'll be a change for everybody, but I think it's one that's a positive change, and we appreciate the community reaching out and always open for discussion when we can see something and work with it.
Excuse me, Lisa. Tom, I'm assuming then that there would be a new system to identify oneself before they came in from that first door?
Yep.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so there's a speaker system we're working on,
Okay.
so if they'd be able to explain what you know, why they're there.
Yeah.
I'm Tom's parent coming in the drop off of Viola, and that would get you in, but still only into the vestibule.
Yeah.
And then would have to determine. And during the school day, it's important too, is most visitors don't actually make it into the next door. So if you're dropping off your child's lunch at buildings that have a vestibule, it's being taken right there. We're not letting people in necessarily all the way into the building to drop lunch off or things like that.
Okay.
So, and that would be the plan too when we finish at Harris Hill and PHS.
Yeah.
So a lot of parents dropping off Starbucks in the middle of the day. So right now we don't have a vestibule, but when we do, we'll be able to do that.
Great,
That
thank
help?
you.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So let me put on my Dr. Driffel hat, and now I'll give you a couple of business updates. So the board will see later in their packet for approvals is our stimulus project construction services. So the district's construction manager solicited proposals for professional services related to upcoming stimulus-funded HVAC work at Indian Landing and Bay Trail. And so when we talk about stimulus funding work, that is the work that we put through based on the COVID funds provided by the state federal government. It's all funded through that. It is around air quality, HVAC work, and putting air conditioning into Indian Landing. The solicited proposals oversee the commissioning of services including the new New York State requirement for energy efficiency and building performance, as well as abatement and monitoring as needed and construction testing as needed. So the board will be looking to approve these services. And just to note, like abatement and monitoring, we have learned, like all schools have, is the minute you start construction, you might hit something that is asbestos or asbestos related.
Or vermiculite.
Or vermiculite, like we did 8 years ago. And so that's why it's always as needed. You want to have those services ready to go in the case that you need them. And then anytime we know that there's asbestos, and there are times we know, then it's all through the, the required process and notification and hazmat to make sure, and students aren't in the buildings when we do that. And so all of this is part of that stimulus project construction services the board will see later in the meeting. That concludes Dr. Driffel's report.
Wow, Dr. Driffel, that was nice and short. Questions for Tom on that? No? Okay,
So
great.
if Dr. Driffel is watching, could you please come back, because I don't like presenting. No. just kidding.
We'll keep our list of questions.
Yeah.
All righty. So that
That concludes superintendent reports.
I didn't want to say it because I could say it, but, all right. So that moves on to our public comment period. Instructions to participate in public comment are listed in the agenda and available online. The board will not be responding to comments during the session, so any concerns raised will be referred to appropriate personnel to follow up. Speakers are expected to identify themselves with their name and address and limit their comments to 3 minutes or less. Please do not name a specific student or staff in public session, and be respectful of others in your words, conduct, and demeanor by adhering to the code of conduct. Our first speaker this evening is Mr. Hines.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Hines. Please state your name and address.
My name is John Hines. I live at 74 Hotchkiss Circle. I'm a 44-year resident in the district with the second generation of students attending Penfield schools. I'm sure that you're aware there are many parents and grandparents of some of the elementary schools concerned about the lax security entrance situation in some of our elementary schools. The superintendent answered most of the questions I had already, but I had sent him a short email expressing my concerns, and he responded the next day to my satisfaction. And I just want to say that most of my prepared comments are out the window now that he's answered those questions. But I will go on to say that main question was why it has taken so long to get the hardware and the things necessary for the school doors to be where they have two secured accesses. That was my one comment, and that pretty well has answered, or I will yield my time. Like I said, the superintendent gave a very good report. One of my concerns is there's so much misinformation out there, word of mouth on the internet, this one saying that and everything, and I don't like to go on that information. I like to come hear it for myself and express it for myself and not have somebody else speaking for me. But I thank you all for your time. I think that we have a wonderful administrative team in this district. I've been associated with several other districts, and I think that the people here work real hard. They're real competent. And I have nothing but praise for the superintendent and the other administrators and teachers and support staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Ms. Plesher-Nizinski. Fletcher?
Yep.
Am I close?
Got it. Yep.
All right, good.
It's a hard one.
Thank you.
Good evening. Melissa Pletcher-Nazinski, 29 Hilltop Drive. I'm not usually a person who is inclined to address boards or speak up in public, but sometimes circumstances call for us to step outside our comfort zones and add our voice to the public discourse. My husband and I have 3 children, 2 who are currently in the district in 11th and 6th grade, 1 who graduated last year. All 3 have spent their entire school years at Penfield. Throughout those 14 years and counting, I have seen the district grow and change to better meet the needs of the entire student body. I have seen the beginnings of staff and leadership diversification to better reflect the diversity of students, the beginning of curriculum change to address our country's diverse and complicated history more thoroughly, and I have seen the district increasingly recognize that school cannot be just about reading, writing, and arithmetic. Of course, these core skills are the foundation of public education, but as society and science has increasingly recognized, humans do not function in a vacuum, and we have a real difficult time compartmentalizing ourselves. When basic needs are not being met, or our environment and everyday life is in upheaval of one sort or another, it is extremely difficult for us to focus on practical skills like reading, math, etc. Although it can be argued that the primary purpose of public education is to teach our scholars core practical skills, it can be argued just as strongly that the other purpose of public education is to teach our young people how to function in a society. It is in school that we often first encounter individuals who are different than us. It is in school that we learn about appropriate conflict resolution. It is in school that our worldview is expanded and we begin to understand that not everyone thinks or does things exactly like we do. It is in school that we often come to realize our strength is in our diversity. A quick search will show you that social emotional learning has always been a part of our education system. The name may have changed, but the core principles have not. There's nothing to be afraid of here, except maybe parents examining their own insecurities. Tonight, I am here to offer my voice in support of what the board and district are doing. Please don't be discouraged by the naysayers. They may be louder than us, but I firmly believe that the majority of Penfield think we're on the right path and want to see our district be the best it can be. Thank you for your hard work and your dedication to our youngest community members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker this evening is Ms. Bradley.
Well, there's, it's
I'm sorry.
Ashley. Sorry, Ashley Bradley.
I apologize. I didn't realize that there were 2. Ooh, there is 2. I need more, whatever. I need better glasses, I think. Thank you.
Ashley Bradley. I live at 2064 Baird Road. I have a daughter at Cobbles and 2 young boys who will be entering Penfield School District pretty soon. I am the parent that brought these security concerns to the forefront, and apparently the only parent who had these concerns enough to reach out. The event that triggered all of this was dropping a violin off at my daughter's school, and the partition window was open for 3 minutes with nobody sitting there. At any point, I could have reached through and buzzed myself into the school. This is I've spent my life trying to protect my children, and seeing these situations, opportunities for someone who has malice, is just very hard for me to deal with. So I am beyond thrilled to hear Dr. Putnam's update tonight, as well as comments from other attendees here. It's nice to know that people have your back. But I'm pleading that you communicate the efforts you guys are going through with going forward, and putting these into place, because it's something that I'm going to continue to follow up on and ensure that it happens, because I was told in May, after the Robb Elementary School shooting, that the exterior doors were going to be locked, and 2 weeks later I went and they were not. So I would appreciate going forward a very clear, open view of what is going on going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Mr. Barbero.
Hi.
Good evening.
Pastor Dave Barbero, 1238 Blossom Road. So I'd like to challenge, if you will, the reality of a statement that I read on the Penfield Central School website. And it relates to the bulletin board that was set up, I think, last month for Pride Month. So the statement is, and I quote, "The Penfield Central School District is committed to ensuring that all students receive equal access to a quality education in a learning environment that is safe, welcoming, and free of discrimination." So here's the challenge that I have with that and the concerns I have. On the bulletin board was a little note that said, "Questions, contact the Gender and Sexuality Alliance Group, advisor, Ms. Need a safe place, find a trusted adult to speak with about your concerns." Well, as a pastor, my concern is for the students who have different values, students who have biblical values, who are being brought up in the church community here in Penfield. Who do these students reach out to when they have questions or concerns about the content of that bulletin board? The note on the bulletin board tells them to contact the Gender and Sexuality Alliance Group to answer their questions. Well, for these students, that's really not an option, because the Gender and Sexuality Alliance Group is part of the problem. Underneath that, it said, "Or find a trusted adult to speak with about your concerns." A trusted adult, is that just anyone? It's very vague. I know you don't have adults walking around the school. I know that for sure, so that's not what it's talking about. But why doesn't it point students to speak with their parents or guardian about situations that they're not sure of, especially with these moral issues? So the truth is, there isn't a safe place for students. Students of faith have been marginalized. Their values, thoughts are not welcome in the conversations concerning the ideology that was represented on the bulletin board. I look forward to working with the school board and the administrators to kind of talk through some of this, and maybe you guys could educate me as to why there's no avenue for a kid that has different values outside of maybe being labeled, as a hater or, some other adjectives that we put on these kids. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before our next speaker, we don't comment on speakers, but as I listen, I also made really clear that the Board of Education allows public comment at board meetings, and I know they appreciate hearing from the community. As superintendent, I will just say, to be really clear, Dave and others, is that the Penfield Central School District supports every single student that attends our schools. We accept students, our staff, and our family, regardless of their religion or non-religion, their race, their gender identity, or any other demographic which makes them who they are. We are a public school open to all. And so I'll be real clear is that as we move forward, where I stand as superintendent and in this district is that our acceptance is wide with no boundaries in terms of who the students are who come here. And so public can always come and speak. I won't argue with public. We're here to listen. But I also want to be really clear with the almost 5,000 students that go to our school, with our almost 1,000 employees who come from all different backgrounds, that they all should have a safe place here, be accepted, and work with us to be the best that they can be. So I appreciate that, and if you want to speak, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk with you offline. That's my statement. I'm happy to talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our last speaker this evening is Miss Sue Bradley. I apologize for that earlier. I guess so. Good evening.
Hello. Yeah, Sue Bradley, 26 Bunker Hill Drive, class of 1978. Also the parent of 2 students from 2008 and 2011. All 3 of us ran track and cross country. My topic of concern revolves around the athletic department processes. I will not go to HR issues, but I will start with a reminder of what the school's mission statement says, which I read recently and it hit home. In addition to education excellence, learners will be challenged to develop their unique talents and abilities in order to maximize their potential for personal fulfillment. Core commitments also state that we treat each other with honesty, dignity, and respect. That's what I feel like we're not seeing currently from administration. My concern, among other questions, which I know we're not answering tonight, is the logistics and process to determine the addition and reduction of coaching staff. And to determine, and that's key, what support the athletes are receiving when changes are made. I have a lot of questions, I'm only bringing a few. What support is the school providing for current and future athletes when a coach is suddenly dismissed with no explanation? Are there now current track job openings? And if not, when were openings posted? I would like to see that documentation with dates. I'm also requesting job descriptions, qualifications, and expected time commitment. For example, could a candidate realistically perform coaching duties at 2 different schools during the same season? We would not want to compromise the support and coaching of our student athletes. I respectfully request that my comments be documented in the board minutes, and responses to questions can be directed to my email. I do have a few additional for later. Finally, it's time for transparency in how the district is managing coaching staff, for the sake of the students that you represent and for the community and taxpayers as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board members, that concludes public comment. We are on agenda item 6. So this is the Dan Driffel slide.
Yes. Yeah.
that Tom talked about. So may I please have a motion and a second that the contract for commissioning services as described above in your packet to ME Engineering PC at a total cost of $49,500 be approved?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Kristen, second by Catherine. Any other comments or questions on that? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. And then we have a second facilities item as well. May I please have a motion and a second that the board authorize the award of services as detailed above and further authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute any necessary documents?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Kristen, second by Mark. Any questions or comments on this item? No. All those in favor? Good. All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. I think I hear the robotics. Tap, tapping, tap, tap, tapping. All right, so we have a couple policies. A policy for second read on the meal charging and prohibit against shaming. We made that one change that you had brought up, Kristen. Did we have any comments on that?
Did you go to first read yet?
Isn't that, oh, did I
sorry,
skip
yeah.
over?
Yep.
Oh, I did.
It's okay.
I apologize. Oops, sorry. I was thinking that was after. All right, let's go back. We have policies for first read. I was so excited that I was going to end us early. Policies for first read.
So these are policies in the 7,000 series. It has to do with due process complaints for students with disabilities, as well as independent education evaluations. You'll see the strike bold, but really it's us utilizing the Erie BOCES service language, and so their language has been updated. So you'll see some minor changes in there that really align with the policy service that our board uses, and so when they update theirs, we take a look. So nothing major that changes our practice currently, but that's the changes you'll see.
Yeah, that's part of our review, our
Yes.
5-year review.
Yeah.
And it was good. The Erie policies were much cleaner language and yeah. Okay, so those will be up till our next meeting.
Yep, so
Yes.
they're up now, and if we get comments, we can take a look at those, and it'll come to a second read potentially at the next board meeting on the 15th of December.
Great. So now we have a policy for second read that I already talked about. So did we get any comments on this policy? So
No.
this policy is 5661, meal charging and prohibition against meal shaming. So we had approved this policy, and then Kristen had brought up that change, that we made that change, and we have no other comments.
No other comments.
Okay.
So the big shift with this is that when graduating seniors leave, they will receive an email, their parents will, parent or guardian, about what to do with any funds they have left over. And so they can provide it to a younger sibling, they can get a check for whatever is in the system, or they can donate it to the lunch service fund. And as a reminder for everybody, the lunch service fund is outside of the school district pay, right? So they do everything based on what they get from selling meals and federal reimbursement. So I think it's a great change. We now, with our new system, have the ability to My School Bucks, I think we use. We have the ability to send out an email to those seniors who are graduating. So
Thank you. Okay, great. So then may I have a motion, please, in a second, that the above policy be approved as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. All right, so that moves us on to our committee information. Krista, do you have comments on the legislative committee meeting?
Yeah, I attended that meeting, and it was led by Sarah Peluso, and I forget the other gentleman's name. And they brought to us a few more position papers that needed to really, they wanted the group to really sit down and crunch and get the language that was appropriate. And a couple of these position papers, again, electric school buses and sustainable transportation came up. And we learned that it was not necessarily electric buses, but mainly zero emission buses. So that might be something.
So I brought that, you shared that with me.
Yeah.
I brought that to Dr. Driffel and George English and Mike Gala. What I learned was, yes, the legislation is zero emission. So that would also allow for hydrogen buses.
Right.
Right now, there is one company making hydrogen buses, and they are producing about one a year. So
Right.
it goes back to it's probably electric buses.
Right.
But,
So
yeah.
we're back to square
But I
one.
thought, I did not know that, so I appreciate
Right.
that and brought it to
And
brought it
that
to
was
Dr.
brought to
Driffel.
our attention by somebody who is on the committee and actually works for RTS.
That's great.
And he explained that for us, and there were a lot of oh, in the room.
Yeah, I had no idea.
But now you say this, and
But
That's
it's early,
interesting.
and as we continue to move through, if this is
Yeah.
the direction the state's going with zero emission buses, and we're planning for that with our new bus facility, but being able to be open with potential changes
Right.
in terms of infrastructure and what that might be,
Yeah.
So this is now, but I don't know what 20 years look like with dark matter or water
I
molecule.
don't know, man. Like, yeah.
Some sort of
Nuclear buses.
something. We'll be ready.
It's, I believe in technology. It's all going to
Flux
work out.
capacitor.
It's all gonna
Yeah,
work out.
somewhere, somehow, it's all going to work out. Another position paper that was brought up was the impact of staff shortages on school districts, and all school districts are being affected by this. We are not unique to this problem. And a couple things from she's not our president, our executive person, Amy Thomas, was that there already is somebody from RTS. His name is Tom Brady, not the footballer. And listen, I don't
Maybe
do
it is the
football.
footballer.
Yeah,
He's, you know,
maybe.
he's gonna need
Maybe
a new
that's his new
job soon.
career, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. But there is already somebody in Albany who's lobbying for electric buses. And it's not that districts don't want to do this, it's just that show us the money. Like, how are we going to do this? Because an electric bus, I learned, is almost $500,000 for one. So that's all. Okay, moving on from electric buses. And this, just last to note that there have never been so many position papers before, and the workload is heavy, so legislative committees are just chipping away bit by bit and trying to figure it out. Yeah. And that there is going to be a Zoom meeting on December 5th where we can meet with our
Representatives?
yes, thank you, that's the word, I was going to say legislators, meet with representatives and actually, you know, ask them questions and have them answer to us. Yeah. And
That sounds good.
that's my
Great.
report.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Questions for Krista?
Just a comment about show me the money. That's been that's just been the ongoing.
So I happened to say that in the meeting because also a lot of this language, especially as a new person on this committee, a lot of this language is very wordy, very confusing. And I'm like, we need our folks to understand. It needs to be more simple, you know? And at the end of the day, we're asking for money. We're asking for money to support our children, to support our administrators, our staff, you know, like to better our education. Because public education is where it's at, folks. It's where it's at. And I said, just show us the money.
Right.
And the whole room went like, yeah.
But the thing too, Krista, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Is, okay, see, I made that mistake, so now I'm tripped up here. You said we were asking for money, and we're really not. Our kids, it's in our Constitution,
Yeah.
it's in our New York State Constitution that they are entitled to their public education. And then when it comes to these mandates, like the zero emission buses.
Right.
And we've had this before, you know, you're gonna do it, and we'll give you the money, and then the money doesn't come. So you always have to, be very, I don't know, just
Persistent.
diligent and
Persistent.
persistent,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
there you have that. It's an age-old thing.
Well, it is. I think about the, pre-COVID where there were much more travels to Albany for advocacy.
Yeah.
And when the state makes a mandate that districts have to do something, then our advocacy has always been through Monroe County School Boards in Penfield specifically too, is then you gotta help us. Like if you're gonna require it for all schools across the entire state, then you have to find a way to fund it as well.
Right.
And so if the zero emissions buses is going to stay, and right now it is, but we know anything can change, but then how are you helping to fund it or to offset the cost, right? We're planned and prepared to purchase buses at a given rate that a fuel bus would use. So what are you going to do in the meantime? And there's great talk and they're pushing money there, but it's a long-term plan. So your advocacy on the legislative committee is huge, and it is sort of that age-old piece, which is if it's something Penfield's putting in, I don't put a hand out asking for funds, but if it's something the state's saying you have to do this, then how do you help out with it? So it's really easy to make a law and say, this won't cost us anything on the state side. It'll just cost the local towns and local school districts something, so.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So then there was information exchange.
Yeah.
Did you?
I attended, as did Catherine. It was about really a focus on REN, the Regional Equity Network, and so how districts across Monroe County are sort of building partnerships and relationships in regards to how we are supporting our diversity, equity, inclusion work across the county. And so Ren presented it. That really is started out of Greece Central Schools based on some work that Webster had done, but includes superintendents and staff from all the school districts in Monroe County, including Rochester City School District. And we meet monthly to sort of share ideas and discuss, sort of like an information exchange for that focus. And so they presented sort of the conversation on what schools can be doing, what they should be looking at.
And of course, Penfield.
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah, we're doing just about everything they're suggesting, and no surprise to us. And I wasn't there to gloat. I was on Zoom, so gloating wouldn't have been very satisfactory, But all kidding aside, it is this county-wide effort, and it was good sharing information. But it made me quietly proud because we're there. We've got this commitment. We're implementing it. And it's good to know that we're doing all that and that the rest of the county finds it equally important.
Great, thank you. Any questions on that?
Nothing I said at that meeting made everybody go, woo.
I know.
Not like that.
Just
Sorry,
so you know.
Tom. Yeah, sorry.
You just have to say, show me the money the next time, I guess. Okay, and then Mark, were you able to attend steering committee?
Yes. So steering committee is really the get together in a monthly summary of what's gone on with all the committees, and their representatives from each committee, like legislative and labor, to talk about what's gone on, as well as the superintendent, as well as the executive director's report. A couple of things that are going on is they are continuing to work on the Monroe County School Board Association pages, working on board presidents and best practices pages as a resource. They are, since COVID is more manageable, I won't say it's gone, but it's manageable, is that they are working on restarting the alumni network for board members and continuing to advocate for Act for Education. Nice. One piece that came up was the success of the law conferences, and they're going to try to look for a bigger venue next time, something that can accommodate up to 100 people. And I think that's gotten more popular, and it's been tight on space. They have brought on additional resources, so that the Monroe County School Board Association staffing has brought in additional resources to help with as a legislative liaison, which is helping with the legislative handbook and setting up the meetings that she just talked about, that we can where we can meet our representatives. And they did talk about that. I don't know if they mentioned you're in the legislative meeting, but in the steering committee they talked about trying to put a trip to Albany together in the springtime.
Yes, they did talk about that. Yeah.
So that, which would be nice, because that was as you talk about advocating and you talk about mandates, we get there during the budget season, which is when a lot of laws are put into place, because again, the governor can put in laws into the budget, and at the time Cuomo was really good about that kind of stuff. Yeah. But what we could do is we could work and help them understand the impact of these mandates, because they don't see what happens on the ground. They see the principles, and we all support electric buses. I'm really excited about it, but they don't see necessarily what happens on the ground, and it's our job to help educate them and possibly help them alter the legislation to avoid any adverse effects. So with that staffing, they're trying to, with the additional staffing, it makes it easier to work on those kinds of things, is really the point. And they also mentioned the 6 position papers that you were just mentioning that's going on.
Yeah.
A lot of work's being done on that.
Great, thank you. Questions for Mark? All right. So that's our Monroe County School Board Committee meetings. Internally, we had a DEI Core Committee meeting on November 7th. So I don't know if Kristen or Krista has some comments they'd like to share about that meeting.
I'm going to let Kristen go with this one, because there were 3 of us on that meeting at home, and I had to help a little one with her computer, and Kristen was there for the whole thing. So.
And just feel free to add if I miss
Yeah.
something. I think the bulk of it was that we took a look at our draft and we looked at our collective comments, our commitments that we have, and we broke out into breakout rooms and we really dived deep into the different collective commitments, and we talked about what we really liked about it, questions that we had, and I think the best thing about this is it's a process. We're not rushing through it. We have that long-term plan, and I feel like we're really, it's kind of like slow and steady wins the race in some ways. We're not rushing it, but we're doing a really great job at it. When I really sat back and reflect the next day, I was like, wow, like we have a 5-year plan, and it's not, we want to get it done quick, but if we do it too quick, we're not going to do it well. So we have that 5-year plan. We're really digging deep, making sure that we're investing with all stakeholders, really getting a lot of voice. It's really great to have student reps on that. I think that that's just so exciting to have our student voices. But it's just that piece of, it's a 5-year plan, and we're digging deep and making sure that we're doing it well, not just doing it to get it done. It's kind of a
Great.
synopsis. Anything you want to add?
I understand that I'm the first one to admit, and Tasha will definitely back me up on this. Like, I want it done now, right? Like, this should have been done 10 years ago, when my children were younger and, you know, whatnot. And since being on the board and learning the different process, you know, different processes of how things are done, I understand a little bit better that it is a process, and we do have 3-year and 5-year plans. And also, because many truths can exist at the same time, I don't like the word but, because but negates what you've said before. And also, I want it done now. Right? But I feel, I know that we're moving in the right direction, and I'm really excited by this and hearing the students, you know, that input. And they're so brave, you know, to show up on Zoom and, you know, speak their mind and be in breakout rooms with adults that they don't know. That's like a big deal. Yeah.
Cool.
So I really appreciate that.
It's very cool to watch.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Board members, questions on that? No, that's awesome. I love our committees when we have student voice. So awesome. All right, so we don't have unfinished business. Do we have any new business tonight? No new business. All right. So may I have a motion, please, in a second, that we adjourn tonight's meeting at 7:40 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments about that? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.